There's some weird noises coming out.
This is so creepy.
Jesus.
This is so creepy. Hello, my name is Edwin Towler.
And I'm Harry Reid, and welcome to our third episode of GoneFeral.
Here in England, lockdown has meant that pretty much all the pubs have had to close. In fact, a lot of places have had to shut down and life has come to an abrupt halt for many people. Our wildlife, though, has been as busy as ever, and this week we have 2 films to share with you.
Our first film was shot back in summer, in the middle of a town.
In the wild outback of West Hampshire, something small and wild has taken a shine to the local town church, often lurking amongst the tombstones. And his name is Hugo Wilson.
Hi, I'm Hugo, I'm 17 and I'm a wildlife photographer.
Hugo's been making an almost daily pilgrimage to the church with his camera to visit his fastest and possibly only friends, a family of Peregrine Falcons. The Falcons have set up camp on top of the church, possibly because they are devout Christians, but probably because of the dedicated nest box that's been constructed and installed for them.
Why do you like photographing peregrine falcons so much?
Well, I've always had an interest in birds of prey, and peregrine falcons have just got to be the coolest. They're the fastest, meanest, they're just the best.
A webcam has also been installed to let falcon fanatics like Hugo watch the birds as they raise their family.
In late March, a pair of falcons began rendezvousing at the church. The male bird, or tearsel, was a flirty bugger and was forever returning to the nest site with presents for the female. She was clearly impressed. At the end of March, a single rusty-coloured egg appeared. One egg turned to 4, and the female began incubating the eggs, using the warmth of her brood patch and insulating feathers. 37 days after egg 1 was laid, the first chick, tiny, featherless, and in all honesty pretty ugly, broke out of his egg. Chicks 2 and 3 soon followed, both male, but the 4th egg failed to hatch. The chicks were incubated for just under a week until they were big enough to be left at the nest alone, while the parents went hunting. Over the next few weeks, the chicks developed fast, exchanging their fluffy down for streamlined adult plumage. As their brown wing feathers grew, so did their confidence, and they began waddling around the nest box, testing their balance. Primal instincts encouraged the young birds to stretch and flap their wings, and 38 days after hatching, practice time was coming to an end. In the last week of June, the inquisitive brothers started hanging around on the sheer ledges of the church, embracing the winds. These next few days are what Hugo has been eagerly waiting for.
What is so special about these next few days?
Well, the young falcons will be taking their first flight in the next few days. It's something I've been really looking forward to for the past few months, and looking forward to photographing.
Right on schedule, the young falcons begin their flight training. And Hugo is one happy chappy. The three brothers tussle in feathery dogfights to practice their aerial agility. Some takeoffs are still a bit sketchy, but the composed elegance of an apex predator is becoming ever more apparent. Flying is only one part of the story though. Another key lesson for the young birds to learn is what counts as food. Not leafy branches, apparently. And insects are unlikely to be very filling. Magpies look tasty, but being a relatively urban environment, the falcons have their eyes set on the local street cuisine. Pigeons. Now, pigeons can be very smart, but these churchyard individuals seem slightly dim. The youngsters might not quite know what to do with them yet, but their parents do. And snow flurries of pigeon feathers from the church steeples aren't uncommon. The juvenile falcons will rely on their parents for a couple of months before becoming fully independent. And in the meantime, there's still a lot of hunting practice and flight training to be done. Having spent so much time watching the falcons, Hugo's seen some pretty special behaviours.
What's been your coolest experience with the peregrines?
Well, it would have to be the first time I ever saw a food pass. The male brought back a massive fat pigeon, then gave it to the female in midair. It was amazing.
Hugo even managed to capture the food pass on camera. A fortunate moment for Hugo, less so for the pigeon. He also managed to photograph this detailed close-up of the female, as she flew too close for him to fit her whole body in the frame. And Hugo's image of juveniles engaged in fisticuffs illustrates the erratic dynamism of these early flights. By the end of summer, the young falcons will have left the nest site permanently, so it looks like Hugo will have to find some new friends.
What's going to be your next project?
Probably some barn owls out in the countryside. I could do with a break from all this urban wildlife.
I must say, I really enjoyed that day. It was absolutely fantastic to watch those peregrines and to meet Hugo.
Yeah, and some of his shots were really impressive. You can tell that he's so committed because he's got a lot of really unique behavioural shots, like the food pass. And you can't get them without that persistence. So really impressive. Right, so for this next film, we're in another town, where Harry told me to meet him in the middle of the night and that we were going to have some fun. Hello and welcome from the wild, untamed tundra of suburban London. Now we're here to do a bit of wildlife photography. No, not urban foxes, urban deer. During the day, this town in East London is just too busy and scary for the deer, so it's only really possible to see them later, at night. So tonight I've done the clever thing and I've dressed to fit in suburbia. So for tonight only, this isn't a body warmer, it's a gilet. Harry though has been an idiot. And he's come dressed as full Survivor Man with his hiking trousers.
Go away.
What a moron.
The red deer in Richmond Park on the other side of London are a very popular subject with photographers. The deer that visit here though are fallow deer.
In the UK, fallow deer aren't technically native. They were introduced in the 11th century, but are now considered naturalised. They tend to live in small herds, mainly living off grasses, herbs, and young broadleaf trees. We weren't meant to be focusing on urban foxes, but as we were in London at night, they were hard to ignore.
The population of fallow deer here is very much wild, but their territory is bound by the M25, the massive congested ring road that goes around London. This means that whenever green spaces within the M25 are developed, there are fewer and fewer spaces for the deer to roam, and so they're forced to come to urban areas like this. After that brief lesson in urban planning, we got on with actually trying to photograph the deer. So it turns out finding the deer is really easy. They're everywhere. We've seen them on pavements, in people's gardens, in parks. It's been amazing. The problem is they like to stick to the shadows, so we haven't been able to get any good photographs yet, and it's really frustrating. So now we're changing tact. So instead of just looking for deer, we're going to look for good sources of light near deer. So things like shop fronts, security lights, and bus stops. That way, if the deer do decide to come into the light, we'll be prepared and we should be able to get some images.
This is exactly what we're looking for. They're grazing under street lights. We've got deer, we've got light, and it should be a bit easier to get photos.
Our luck with the lighting finally gave us a chance to get some photos. This first image used the lights to illuminate the deer, with the urban building in the background contrasting nicely with the wild animal. With this second image, the dynamic contrast was achieved by using the light to silhouette the deer.
Harry then explains why we were being lazy and staying in the car.
Tonight we've decided to drive around where we can to avoid walking around and flaunting our camera gear as much as possible, because that is never a good idea late at night, especially in London.
And then we ignored our own advice and went outside.
How are you finding it, mate?
I think it's a bit weird. It feels really spooky because we keep hearing stuff like that and it's horrible. Things didn't improve when we decided to go into a field.
It's completely pitch black in the middle of this field and we can just see silhouettes of deer on the outside of the field. So we can just see black antlers. It's really quite freaky.
Yeah, so we're trying to get on the shadow side of the deer with the light behind them. So, what was that?
What the hell is that?
Okay, very nice. Anyway, I'm trying to say, we're trying to get in a position where we can get the deer with light behind them so that we get the silhouettes of the deer left behind. And to make for some quite interesting photos. But it's proving quite tricky because they're so aware. And they're quite what the
There's some weird noises coming up.
This is so creepy. Jesus. This is so creepy. I don't like this.
Let's go back to the car.
Having failed to get more photos due to a lack of bravery, we got back in the car. A few minutes later, we came across a busy deer crossing and quickly deployed some pro photographer maneuvers. The fallow bucks were handsome fellas, especially with their palmate antlers. They're the only deer species in the UK with this flatter antler type.
This photo shows the antlers well, and the colourful streetlights in the distance establish the environment as urban, even though it's a tight portrait. Although the town is quieter in the evening, the roads aren't closed and vehicle collisions with deer are inevitable. So if you do ever find yourself driving near deer, please take extra care.
As the night went on, we were clearly starting to grow weary. We're very tired. It's gone 2 a.m. now, and I think we're going to call it a night. To be honest, I found this whole experience quite creepy. Anyway, we're both quite fatigued now, and I don't think we're going to get any good photos from here on out because we just can't focus enough to operate the cameras.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Good night.
good night.
Sleep well. That was brilliant. No, it bloody wasn't. Don't worry, mate. We can always try again when you're feeling a bit braver.
Anyway, as usual, thank you so much for watching.
Next week, I encounter a tree.
And I get censored. Absolute.
See you then.